Thank you, Urs. Thank you. Thank you. Welcome, dear family, friends, alumni, Insead, faculty and staff. It is my pleasure to welcome you to this graduation ceremony for the class of 2019 for our EMBA program and 2020 for the EMBA participants. I just learned that this class will remain in history as the class that helped our Dean of Degree programs lose 20 kilos. And I think that's quite astonishing. But especially I want to welcome you, our graduates. Today is the beginning. It is not the end of your relationship with Insead. You are the Insead of the future. So you saw the history of Insead very briefly. Probably the most important part of that short video is to remember that Insead is a mission-driven school. It was started in 1959 by Georges Doriot with the idea to bring management education to Europe, but more importantly, to promote peace and prosperity in Europe by bringing together people from all over Europe. The Brits, the Germans, the French, who had been fighting with each other for centuries before, were supposed to come together and start building businesses instead of fighting with each other. Today, our mission remains the same, except that our vision is global. And today we bring people from all over the world with the same idea to promote peace and prosperity through management education. In the last 60 years, our school has been very successful in innovating, launching new ideas, starting new programs all over the world. In 1967, Insead was one of the first business schools to welcome women to our MBA program. In 2000, we opened the campus in Singapore, 2010 in Abu Dhabi. But we don't stop. Every single day, we think, what should we do next? And we are opening now the San Francisco Hub in 2020. Last year, we launched the Hoffman Institute for Business and Society. We're continuously changing our curriculum and introduce new groundbreaking initiatives. So all this is great. It's wonderful that the school is so good, but the problem is that the speed at which we're moving is slow. We might be the best business school in the world. That's at least what we think here in this room. But the question is, are we good enough to address the challenges that the world is facing? And the world today is facing incredible challenges. Challenges related to the environment and climate change, challenges related to cohesion, populism, and inequality, challenges coming from the implications of new technologies for the future of work. To really understand these challenges and where we are in this moment of time, we need to go back in time and look at history. 2,000 years ago, the average person in the world did not have very high levels of consumption. Basic food, basic shelter, clothing, and not much more. For centuries, for 18 centuries, the living standards for the average person did not improve significantly. In 1820, incomes had increased by only 50%, but life expectancy remained between 30 and 40 years. 9 out of 10 people in the beginning of the 19th century lived in extreme poverty. Today, life expectancy has doubled, and incomes have increased nearly 15 times since 1820. Only 2 centuries times 15. This growth has been magnificent and has produced miracles. All the technology that we have with us today is a result of the last 2 centuries. We are fascinated by these technologies and by the ascent of the human race, but in this fascination, very often, we forget the costs associated with this episode in human history. Environmental damage is pervasive. More importantly, we forget the social implications for economic growth and industrialization. In the 19th century, when the world was adopting steam engines, discovering electricity, engines with internal combustion, and so on, The political system could not deal with this new economic reality and had to collapse. So monarchies around the world were collapsing, giving way to new ideologies, to liberal democracies, to communism, and later to fascism. In the 19th century alone, the British Army fought in 34 wars to secure the natural resources that they needed for this industrialization. In 1848, Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels wrote the Communist Manifesto, which paved the way for oppressive regimes in the 20th century. The Communist Manifesto was not given from above, written in stone. It was written because they observed what was happening to a society at the time. 20th century, we saw 2 world wars, Cold War, and so on. Today, we are facing a lot of issues that are remaining from the past, that we have to deal with. When you look at Financial Times, The Economist, when you look at the Business Roundtable in the United States, everybody is saying we need to change the way that we think about capitalism. But it's actually more difficult than this. It's not that we have to undo or improve on things that we're doing. We're facing a completely different reality. Because today, we are experiencing the 4th industrial revolution, and the implications of this revolution, like of the previous industrial revolutions, are currently unknown. The challenge posed to humankind in the 21st century by infotech and biotech is arguably much bigger than the challenge posed in the previous era by steam engines, electricity, and railroads. We cannot afford failed models, writes Yuval Harari in his book, 21 Lessons for the 21st Century. How the future will look. So today we have not only to look at the past and to say we have to improve on our models, but we have to anticipate the future because we want to avoid the volatility, the unwanted outcomes of wars, social unrest, and other social disasters as a result of this revolution. So we have to preempt these possible outcomes. Of course, in all these discussions, when we are thinking how should we move forward, we have to remember one very important thing, and that is business can be a force for good. When I talk about business as a force for good, I always start first with the narrow interpretation or the core of business as a force for good. Business as a force for good in narrow sense means that business creation is the only engine of economic growth. Without economic growth, there is no poverty reduction. In China, in 1980, there were 840 million people who lived in extreme poverty. Today, there are less than 20 million people. It's a miracle that had never happened in the history of the world before. And this miracle happened only because of one thing, and that is economic growth. So business does create jobs, does create, alleviates poverty, and brings prosperity. But unfortunately, this is not enough because there are also other consequences of growth and business creation. And in the last years, we have seen tensions between business and society increasing. Very often, when we start discussing what should we do with capitalism, what should we do with shareholder value, very often we resort to the simple textbook answer. The government will have to deal with this. Because in the textbooks, that's what we do. If there is a market failure, if there is an externality, then you have regulation, taxation, subsidies. But it's not enough. Today, business plays a much bigger and more important role than ever before. And without changing our norms, without changing the way that we think about the world and how we do business, I don't think it will make much progress. Yuval Harari, in his first book, also wrote about something that he called imagined reality, stating that we live in an imagined reality. There are physical laws, there are biological laws that we cannot ignore, but most of our behavior is driven by social constructs that we have created. Ever since the cognitive revolution, he writes, sapiens have been living in a dual reality. On the one hand, the objective reality of rivers, trees, and lions, and on the other hand, the imagined reality of gods, nations, and corporations. As time went by, the imagined reality became ever more powerful, so that today, the very survival of rivers, trees, and lions depends on the grace of imagined entities such as the United States and Google. So we have to ask ourselves, what is the imagined reality today? What are the norms today that should be scrapped down? Like 50 years ago, universities around the world, business schools around the world started changing norms by welcoming women in their programs in the same way that we look today in the 1950s or the 1960s, and we ask how could they actually have such discrimination. Future generations will look at us and say, how could they conduct business in this way without concern for the environment and for the future? So what is normal today that needs changing? We, the society, we want business leaders who not only create phenomenally successful companies, but ones that in the process also create value for the society and maximize their social impact. The good news is that change is coming. More and more companies wrestle with the idea how to integrate performance and progress. More and more young people care about these things. And you can read every single day about protests from young people saying we need a better treatment of climate and the environment. There is an urgency today to act. We are creating imbalances between humans and nature. We're creating deeper imbalances between rich and poor. Imbalances between men and women persist. We're creating imbalances between the current and future generations. So the question for us at Insead, for you, is do you want to be at the vanguard of this change shaping the new world? Or do we want to be bystanders and leave these to market forces? And it's not an abstract you. It is you, the graduating class of 2019. As a dean, as you join the community, I ask you of three things. First, see challenges as opportunities. In March 2016, AlphaGo, the computer program developed by Google DeepMind, managed to beat one of the best players in the Asian game of Go, Lee Sedol, in 4 out of 5 games. The interesting thing is how this actually happened. In game 2, the computer played move 37 in a way that surprised all observers and changed the course of the game. It was a move that may happen 1 in 10,000 in terms of probability. Everybody was surprised. In game 4, however, Lee Sedol also made a move while being behind in the game, move 78, that was dubbed as one of these unusual, unexpected, low probability moves, again 1 in 10,000. As a result, Lee Sedol won. Later, when he was discussing his game, he said that actually his move was indeed inspired by AlphaGo's move 37. So we assume that artificial intelligence will challenge us in a way that will not be able to respond, but actually humans have unbelievable capacity to learn and to innovate. So be inspired by this and find your move 78. Second, Insead is the business school for the world. I must ask you to determine how you will contribute to business as a force for good. We are a different school, mission-driven with strong values. We want the world to admire you, our alumni, not only for what you have done for the bottom line of your company, but to admire you also for what you have done for society and for the environment. When we say for the environment, basically we say for future generations. Today is the beginning and not the end of your Insead journey. I'm asking you, and that's my third request, to be true ambassadors of what Insead stands for. And you know what Insead stands for. It is diversity, inclusion, understanding, tolerance, friendship. It is about building bridges and destroying walls. So going forward, I hope we will champion diversity because it is the key to strengthening individuals, businesses, institutions, and society. Let us promote peace and prosperity for every individual, community, and country in the world. We are proud that you decided to earn your executive MBA at Insead. And I have no doubt that the EMBAs of class of 2019 and EMBA of 2020 will change the world for the better and contribute much to the prominence of our alumni and our school, which, by the way, from now on, you can call your own. The world is facing incredible challenges. You acquired the knowledge, the tools, the skills in the last 14 months to turn these challenges into opportunities. You'll be facing an uphill battle, but you have to win because you are Insead. And for us, from our perspective, you're not only alumni now, but you're partners in this magical journey that we call Insead. Congratulations, thank you, and good luck, class of 2019. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ilian. It's now my great pleasure and honor to introduce Helen Hay, who is a EMBA 11 graduate. Helen is an actuary by training and has 20 years of experience in many of the large FTSE 100 companies. She's currently the United Nations Industrial Development Organization Goodwill Ambassador for Industrialization in Africa. She's the founder of the Made in Africa initiative, which advises African governments on industrialization and investment promotion. She's also doing business there as a co-founder of C&H Garment, which is a pioneer Pan-Africa export-oriented garment manufacturer. Concurrently, she's also leading the Blockchain Charity Foundation, which is a non-for-profit foundation dedicated to using blockchain for transparency in philanthropy and achieving the UN Sustainability Development Goals. This initiative was initiated by Binance, the largest cryptocurrency exchange by trading volume in the world. In addition to this, she's a committee member of Global Mission of Business and Sustainable Development. She's also the recipient of several awards, among them the African Business Icon Award and the Officer of the National Order of Lion of Senegal. Please help me welcome Helen Hay, EMBA 11.